Hi everybody, I am going to show you how to make an easy cloth mask using limited sewing and limited materials. So just a piece of cotton fabric. This is for if you don't have access to any special craft materials right now, or if you don't have access to a sewing machine. As a reminder, a mask is not a substitute for staying home. This is just something to wear when you need to leave the house to get those essentials. You still do need to avoid social contact. The other thing to note is the mask we are making today is not acceptable for healthcare professionals or for donating to hospitals. We're going to do a minimal amount of sewing, which means it's not going to meet those hospital standards. These masks will be for personal use only. The three things you absolutely do need for this sewing pattern that are special sewing tools would be a sewing needle, a spool of thread in any color, and an iron for this particular sewing pattern. Where can you get a needle and thread if you don't have one? You can arrange a contactless exchange with a friend or family member or neighbor, dropping off on your front porch. If you go to a big box store, you can find them in the laundry aisle. You can usually find a little sewing kit like this in the craft section, or at a regular grocery store you might find a repair kit in the laundry aisle. If you do have just a repair kit only, you might have one of these tiny spools of thread. If you do have a tiny spool of thread that might not be enough thread, you probably need a couple of these little guys to finish this project. So if you can, try to get a full-sized spool of thread. Otherwise, have a couple of these. What type of fabric should you use? You should use 100% cotton, tightly woven with no stretch, so no t-shirt material. Newer fabric is better than older fabric. You can hold up 2 layers of fabric, and you don't want to be able to see through this, but you should still be able to breathe through it. Before you begin, wash and dry your fabric on hot settings and iron it smooth before you begin. So everything we'll be using today is our fabric, a ruler, you need some sort of pen or marker, some sharp scissors, the sharper the better, needle and thread, your iron, and then sewing pins, or if you don't have pins, some paper clips will also do. So you're going to start by washing, drying, and ironing your fabric and getting all your tools together. If you need to practice doing some hand sewing, you probably want to Google some basic hand stitches on the internet. I'm not going to spend time showing that on camera here, but I do have some examples. This is a running stitch. Needle goes in and then it moves over and comes back out. Running stitch is fine when you pull these 2 pieces apart. There's a little bit of pulling, but the fabric is not coming apart, so that's good. The smaller you make your stitches, the more secure it's going to be. If your stitches are too large, then you're going to get really big gaps. So if I pull on it really hard, you can start to see gaps. So the running stitch is okay, but if you use the running stitch, you want to make those stitches nice and small. I recommend using a back stitch. You can't really tell the difference just by looking at it, but if you look at the back side of the back stitch, you can see every time I put the needle in, instead of just moving forward, I actually moved backward halfway before moving forward. Again, you can Google images on this, maybe some animations to help you understand if you don't understand how the back stitch works. But I like the back stitch because for the same size of stitch, you get a lot of strength. It does use a little bit more thread though. I just find that the back stitch is more secure, and you don't have to make your stitches really tiny because the back stitch gives you more security for the same size of stitch. I'm left-handed, so this is what I did. I did a right-handed one as well. You can see on the back, every time I made a stitch, I move backwards. So that's what I recommend is the back stitch. The main takeaway here is if the two pieces of fabric stay together, you're doing fine. You don't have to worry about your stitches being perfect or like they came out of a machine. As long as the pieces of fabric stay together and there's not a huge gap, it's fine. All right, so for this pattern, we are going to cut out two 9x6 rectangles. So that's two 9x6 rectangles. And we are going to cut four 2x16 rectangles. So these are going to be for our ties. So cut four 2x16 rectangles. So if your fabric has a pattern on one side, that is called the right side of the fabric, and then the sort of ugly back is called the wrong side of the fabric. So when you're laying out your rectangles, make sure the pattern is facing the way you want it to when you're done. And when we start with those first two big rectangles, we're going to start with right sides together, and then we're going to flip them right side out afterwards. When we do the straps, they're just going to go wrong sides to the inside, and that's how they'll stay. All right, so I've got my two 9x6 rectangles, and I've got my four 2x16 rectangles. We're going to set these aside because those are going to be the straps. We're going to start with our main rectangles here, and we are going to pin them right sides together. Again, if you don't have pins, you can use paper clips or binder clips. So I'll just do a couple of paper clips as an example there. For your thread, you can do single thread or double thread, whatever is easier for you. If you double the thread, it's easier to hold on to. You just put it through the needle and tie the ends together. I'm going to do a single thread just because I find that it gets stuck a little bit less often. Just going to tie a knot here at the end. All right, we need to make a 2-inch mark for an opening at the top where we are not going to sew. So I'm just going to get my ruler out here and make a 2-inch mark with my marker. And so in between those two marks, we're not going to sew that. We're just going to make a big U shape around those two marks and not finish the middle. You want to sew about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of the fabric. So I'm just getting this started here. Doing my little back stitch. And I'm just starting to sew there. You probably can't see because my thread is the same color as the fabric. And off we go. So the 2-inch opening that we're going to use to turn it right side out later, it's kind of a tight fit for my medium-sized hands. If you have large fingers, large hands, you might want to make that opening a little bit bigger, like 2.5 inches, maybe 3. And as you're going around here, try to keep your stitching as straight as possible. If you want to just take a pencil or a pen and just draw a line 1/4 inch in from your edge of the fabric, and just so you have a line to follow, that's totally cool. That gives you a nice clean edge. Okay, so we have finished the part where we sewed around the outside. Everything is stitched except for this little part in the middle here. We're going to go ahead and reach inside, and we're going to turn the mask right side out at this point. Stick your finger into the corner and poke it out so that corner becomes nice and pointy. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to iron this flat. So you'll need to do a little bit of pulling on the seams to flatten them out. Right now it looks kind of bumpy and amorphous, so when you have the edges here, just kind of pull them taut and then fold those edges back nicely. You might have to pinch it a little bit, and then we're just going to press that seam so that it lays nice and flat. Making these edges as sharp and neat as possible. All right, we're gonna go iron this. Alrighty. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna make the tucks. So we're gonna make a series of 3 pleats in the short ends, and we're going to make sure that we make the pleats that they're going in the same direction on the left and the right. So I'm just going to start by doing one right in the middle. It should be an overlap of about 1/4 inch, so using up about 1/2 inch total. And then you can pin this, or you can use a paper clip. So there I've made one pleat right in the middle. I'm going to do another one right next to it in the same direction. And then I'm going to do one on the other side. Again, pleats going in the same direction. So there we have 3 pleats going all in the same direction. We're going to repeat that on the other side, making sure the fabric goes the same way. Alright, you can see the rough outlines here. It looks like they're not quite lining up, so I'm going to do a little bit of fine tuning. Alright, that's a little bit better. Alright, so now our job is to go down both sides and stitch those tucks into place. Alright, so my first set of pleats are stitched down. I'm going to go back over them a second time to really anchor them down. Okay, so there's my first set of pleats all done. They're fairly well stitched in. I didn't really go all the way to the edges. I just really stitched the pleats only, and because the fabric is so thick, I wasn't really able to do a back stitch. I just kind of did a running stitch over one direction, and then I did a running stitch going in the other direction, just making sure I get all the little edges. So time to do the other side. Alright, so there is the body of our mask with our 3 pleats all going in the same direction. So that completes the main body of the mask. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the ties. So this is the part where we're going to take these 2-inch strips and we're going to fold them in half using the iron. And then once they're folded in half, we're going to fold them in again. So let me just get started and then I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so I have folded this strip in half, and then I have folded the ends in a 1/4 inch again. So in, in. This is going to be our strap, and all we have to do is sew down the edge all the way until the raw edges are completely encapsulated. I am going to take the little tiny end here and I'm just going to make a little tiny fold and then put it back together, and I'm just going to pin this. That's so the end won't fray. Alright, so there's your first tie. Just do 3 more. That's 2 ties done, so just gotta do 2 more. Alright, so that's 3 done, 1 more to go. Okay, so I lost a chunk of my video, a small bit, so I'm going to tell you how we're going to attach these ties. We are going to pin them to the corners of the mask. Just lay it over the corner, overlapping with the mask by about a 1/4 inch. Pin them in place, and then just do a running stitch or a whip stitch around the area where the tie overlaps with the mask. So again, just take the ties, pin them to the 4 corners, and then stitch them down where the tie meets the mask. I did a little running stitch along the outer edge, and then I did a whip stitch around the inner 3 edges. So that's what I did there. Alright, and there we go. There's your mask with 4 ties. Just remember, when you are wearing this out, say to the grocery store, go ahead and put it on. Once it's on, don't touch the mask. Go ahead, go to the grocery store, come home, and then once you get home, wash your hands. Remove the mask carefully, wash your hands again, and then get that mask right into the laundry and launder that in hot water. So there you go. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put the mask on. Should be nice and high on your nose, over your ears. Then do the bottom ones behind your neck. Here you go. And if you get a problem with your glasses fogging up, just take a Kleenex, fold it up nice and small, and put that Kleenex right underneath the mask on top of your nose. That Kleenex will help stop the fogging. So overall, the mask took me about an hour and a half. I'm a pretty fast hand sewer, so it might take you a little bit longer. But yeah, there you go.